seconds to get situated, grab a water, grab a drink, grab whatever you need to do, and we'll kick things off. I do, love seeing some of the folks that are already on here. My good friend Mike Goy, good seeing you last week up in New York, Mike. I'll be back up there soon, and we'll kick it again. But I see a lot of familiar faces. This goes without saying, but please make this interactive. This webinar is absolutely not for me, Jeff, Dave, or Chris. This is for everybody in our community and customers. So please light up the chat. We'd love to hear from you. You'll see a couple of pinned announcements in there. We definitely want to connect with you. So hit those links, meet everybody, connect with them, follow them. These are all close friends of mine and also just good human beings. So you're in great shape if you're going to follow these folks. So, that being said, we got a lot to discuss and a fair amount of time to do it, but we'll get things rolling. For those that have never joined one of our webinars, first off, thank you. This is super fun for me. I know for some of these other executives on the phone, getting to be able to jump in and give back to the community and shed some light on how we think about operating is one of the best things that we can ever do. So please exercise that today as we start having some of these conversations. But before we get too far into it, obviously the topic, we're going to stay all around operations. Yes, we're going to say RevOps a good bit, but we're going to expand that out to business systems, to marketing ops, sales ops, finance ops. Ultimately, these executives in this room would not be where they are without leveraging their operations team and using them as a superpower. I'm excited to hear why that's the case. And if we take away anything today, hopefully all of our ops folks in here listening are thinking, all right, here's how I go and start having more constructive conversations with my C-suite to further elevate me and my team. Before we get way too far into that, we got to do a round of intros. Chris, I'm going to kick it off with you, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Alrighty, so I am Chris Rudegrop. I am the CEO and co-founder of Sendoso. For those of you who don't know Sendoso, we are a sending platform helping out other companies send out direct mail, gifts, swag, you name it, we can send it. Started the company about 6 years ago and spent about a decade in sales prior to that.
I love it. I would be remiss if I didn't say we're massive Sendoso fans over here. So, yeah. And Chris, you and I have known each other forever. I know we wouldn't be, from a Sonar perspective, without you giving me a lot of early advice on how the hell to go run a successful company. So, thank you, my friend.
For sure.
Dave, I'm going to fly it over to you.
Yeah. I might date myself a little bit, but I've been in SaaS and software for close to 2 decades at this point. Spent the last 7 years as the chief revenue officer, scaling both Winmo and Allbound to successful exits of private equity, and started Atlas a number of months ago. So I'm working with CEOs of SaaS companies in the post-product market fit stage, so call it 2 to 20 million. ARR to help with everything I was doing before as a CRO.
Absolutely. I've known Dave. I've known you for a little while now. Obviously, a customer at the previous world that y'all were in, but I know we've got a lot of folks on staff here at Sonar that you worked with closely too. So
that's right. Yep.
Great minds think alike. Mr. Perkins, I'll let you bring us home.
Thanks, Brad. It's great to be here. Chris, I've been the recipient of many Sendoso packages of swag as a CMO. It seems like you've really I should thank you, actually. I've gotten so much stuff over the years from all these people who want to sell me MarTech and advertising solutions and all that good stuff. But I am Jeff Perkins. I'm the CMO of a company called Greenlight Guru. We are a SaaS solution really focused on medtech companies. So we're very fast growing. We sell what is a EQMS product into medical device companies. So as they're building medical devices, we help them really maintain compliance and quality throughout the process. And we've digitized basically something that used to be done in paper and spreadsheets. And so it's one of those great stories of a company that figured out just kind of a better mousetrap and is growing very fast as a result. And so I've been there about 6 months. Prior, I was at a company called Park Mobile that some of you may know, or some of you have used the app. If you've ever gotten a ticket when you use Park Mobile, don't call me or blame me because I don't work there anymore. But that's where I was for 5 years prior to joining Greenlight Guru about 6 months ago.
I can absolutely validate that. I think I've tried to text or call Jeff when I have been over my limit on the parking lot around here in Atlanta, and I can validate he cannot get you out of that fine. But
I was like a leader of the company and the head of customer service also there. So everyone knew where to find me if they had a problem with their parking.
he got it all. Jeff got hit by all angles. So I love it. Thank you all for being here. Of course, I want to connect with everybody as well. So hit the button either in the chat or on the screen. Let's all connect. Um, I say this sincerely. I know I am a better operator of a business because knowing these three guys and just the wealth of knowledge you all have. So I'd be remiss if I just didn't say thank you, of course, to three of y'all. I think if anything, I know our community and our customers, everybody attending this, whether it be recording or live right now, are going to get a ton of value on this. We're all ops centric. We all have different backgrounds on it, but we've all felt the impact ops can make on our businesses. I'm pumped to see how you all think about it and really share some of that insight with our team. Of course, I'm going to launch a quick poll. Let me see if I can do that real quick without breaking anything. We want to hear from you all. Is your C-suite actively investing in RevOps? I hope there is a ton of yeses and absolutely. I hope there's not as many nopes, but we will see. So jump over on the right side to our poll. We'll keep it open for a little while, but we will also get the party started. We're just going to start kicking off. Best question, I think the first place to start, want to hear a little bit from every one of you. How has operations influenced the success across your leadership team, your go-to-market teams? I think if you think about this holistically, we all know and feel that impact, but I'm really curious either some success stories or how you have seen that influence. Chris, I'm going to start with you. We'll go Dave, and then Jeff, you can bring us home.
Alrighty. So I can kind of think of three things that popped to mind for this one. The first is RevOps runs our weekly forecast meetings that drive all the visibility that I need to go back and think about our forecast planning. And I think in today's world where forecasting is increasingly important to set yourself up for a path to profitability mindset, having accurate forecasts is key. So they're kind of wrangling all the data, but then mixing that with all of the sales account management managers and making sure they're using the tools correctly, like Cleary, to bring in and roll up what's commit, what's upside, what's slipped, etc. So they're leading the charge there, which is critical for me. I think the second thing is RevOps is running a lot of key initiatives for us. There's some new industry strategies. There's some new programs around multi-threading, a new enterprise account prioritization. And so these are things that the executive team has flagged as important initiatives leading into some of our OKRs that are boiling up from the bottom. And the RevOps team is directly in charge of getting these across the finish line. And the last one I'd say is small but mighty, especially as we continue to grow the company, continue to add in new executives, is just managing the data dictionary and what are the important things that we should be tracking and what is it, so the tribal knowledge doesn't die when executives come and go or when even ICs and managers come and go.
I love it. You're being that glue is just so clue to it. It's so important. Dave, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I always think of RevOps as really, helping from an efficiency and alignment, standpoint. And when I bring in head of RevOps to companies, I essentially see them as a chief of staff, right? So as the company grows, I am unable as CRO to stay as actively involved in department meetings and understand what are the areas of friction and challenges and frankly opportunity going on. So having a dedicated RevOps leader and a RevOps team to be able to be a part of those and bubble that information up to me to make better strategic decisions, myself and all C-levels, to make better strategic decisions. I mean, it's critical. Very similar to Chris as well. What RevOps has done is really being in charge of those OKRs and KPIs, weekly KPIs on a leadership perspective. So, as we're, what are those 3 to 5 things that we're really focused on this quarter, this year, and how are we tracking every week and every quarter to be there? So obviously we want to know, and when things start to slip, it's better to know that information in the middle of January than the end of March in Q1 if it's a Q1 initiative. Or And at the end of the day, like what I always feel like behind every great CRO, you're going to find a great or even better, RevOps leader. I think what the RevOps leader that I've been a part of have done is make every single one of my leaders that much better. So for example, there's my VP of success was spending a lot of time trying to get the new CS tools that we have up and running, and having RevOps to be able to take that project and that initiative over and spend time really where they should be spending time with the team and with customers, and and driving expansion and preventing churn. That had a huge impact, and sales leaders as well. Like, it's great that a lot of companies do maybe some generalized training once a week, once a month, once a quarter, and then you'll do weekly one-on-ones where you go through maybe some pipeline reviews and things like that. But the information that RevOps was able to provide my sales leaders to say, hey, the average or the median of going from stage A to stage B is 30 days, but Bob's at 45. Like, let's dive in and really figure out what the opportunity is and why that is the way it is. And maybe it's a process issue, but maybe there's, Bob's not doing the right things, and you can really help them out very strategically in that. So those are some of the ways I've leveraged RevOps and how they influence, my entire go-to-market teams.
Yeah, I'll tell you the thing that sticks out to me most on that, and a couple parts of it, but considering them part of like a chief of staff type role, I'd be remiss if I didn't say our internal ops guy, and I say ops guy, he's our director of business strategy and operations. Jeff, actually, good segue, worked at PGI a long time ago, Mitchell, but I keep him, I say within arm's length. I'm on the phone with him 4, 5, 6 times a day at least, trying to better understand the way he's thinking about the how we go and execute, and he gets the why from us from a leadership side. But I would be remiss if we wouldn't execute at all if I didn't have him really creating a how strategy for us. So, Jeff, I'll turn it over to you too from a CMO angle. Loves to get your thoughts.
Yeah, and I kind of, as you guys were talking, I was thinking back to like the pre-RevOps world, which wasn't that long ago. I mean, RevOps is a relatively new function, even though RevOps type people have always been in organizations, but as a formal function, it's relatively new. And it was back at my time at PGI, and I'll never forget this. We went into a QBR and with sales and marketing, and I was a VP of marketing there. And I got up there and we're showing all these metrics. I was like, guys, we are crushing it. Look at the click-throughs and look at the web traffic, and OMG, we're just like you're welcome. Like, and mic drop. And then I sat down, and then the head of sales got up there and he's like, we have no leads, we have no deals, pipeline's dry, we're totally screwed, we're not going to make the quarter, we're not going to make the year. And it was this total like misalignment between what marketing thought we were delivering and the reality of what sales was actually getting from us. And it was just a great lesson in that, like, one, you got to be super aligned with your sales team. But even if you're not, even if you're well aligned, the natural human nature is going to be a lot of like, well, we're not getting the best leads, or, sales isn't working the leads, sales is dropping the leads. And that goes on a lot, even today, right? Even when you have really, really high performing sales and marketing orgs that are well aligned. And what I love about RevOps, it's like Switzerland. It's like right between. Yes. And a good RevOps leader will call out marketing, and they'll call out sales, and they'll try to come up with the best solutions. And to me, that is just invaluable to an organization that wants to be high performing and that wants to really, really grow their revenue. And so I've really loved this function, and having this function kind of in the org, and have the function kind of not be a sales function or a marketing function. At Greenlight Guru, it actually sits in finance. So it sits kind of between. And so when I say Switzerland, it really is. It's not, the RevOps leader doesn't report to me. I can't call her and be like, hey, let's give it to the sales guy in the next meeting. I mean, she's really independent, and so is her team. And that's just what makes it super valuable, because she's an umpire. She's calling balls and strikes, and she's not precious about marketing or sales. So it's just it's an invaluable function today within an organization that wants to grow, be high performing, be well aligned, and that wants to solve big problems.
That's exactly it. I can validate everything you said. Having Greenlight Guru as a customer of ours and knowing how and where that sits in y'all's business, it's so smart. I used to always kind of joke around. Where you feel the impact, and we're going to talk about this, like what happens when you don't have operations. You feel some pain. I'll parlay that story for just 1 second, but I think your biggest thing, really identifying that, they remove bias. Like they, especially if they sit in a group like finance, right? Like it's very easy. And I know a lot of folks, I know a lot of these names as attendees right now. And I ask everybody, where does RevOps report to? Is it the CMO, the CRO, or the CEO? And candidly, I think the market's still figuring that out. But if there's one thing that's very true about it, it does start to remove this bias. Like I'm not gonna either overinflate a number here that's beneficial to sales, where that also deprives marketing or success or anybody else. And so keeping it very Switzerland is the right move. Again, we've all felt the impacts of it being present in our in our business. But man, we've also felt the pain of it being a void. And if we want to unpack that for a minute, because here's the reality of it: we've all run businesses or been in different roles, and there's times that somebody transitions out, they get a new opportunity, or go through some interesting financial headwinds like this, and there's times that that role is empty and vacant. I would love to know, and Dave, we'll start with you. We'll go over to Jeff, and Chris, bring us home. What it looks like for your business if you don't have that function, if you don't have that support.
Yeah, that's frightening. Well, I can tell you one thing that would have happened at Allbound is all of our board slides would be littered with just pie charts, because it was a running joke. Like that's the only thing I could put together was a pie chart to show any sort of data. So, and it was somewhat accurate as well. But that sort of, all jokes aside, that sort of information and being able to provide the right data, in the right mechanism to your board, as everyone on this panel knows, is extremely important. And that was something we saw level up immediately. But really at the end of the day, what happens without RevOps? This is what I think happens. Your conversion rates go down, your ACV goes down, your win rates will be lower, your AE to CS handoffs are not as crisp. You're not getting in front of the right opportunity at the right time to create expansion. You're not predictive enough to understand churn, and thus your churn is going to increase. And ultimately, it might lead to, and a lot of times does, employee attrition, because maybe the onboarding isn't where it should be. Maybe the training isn't where it should be. So all of this all these extremely important metrics suffer by not having RevOps as a part of your company.
You're spot on. That's exactly what I was going to share a second ago. It's like we felt the pain of this at an executive level, like the dreaded boardroom story. It's like start at the top of the funnel. Marketing's like, we had a great quarter. We generated 10 million in new pipeline, and bounce past that down to the sales leader. And she's like, I didn't see 10 million come in new pipeline. I saw 8, but that's okay because we closed 50% of it and we got 4 million in new revenue. And you bounce past that down to the head of CS, and they're like, I didn't see $4 million in new business come in. I only saw 3, but that's okay. Our retention's here. And you look down at the end of the table, and your investors and your executive team all just has their hands in their face because, like, who's on first and what's on second, right? It just doesn't make sense. Jeff, I know you've probably felt some of that too. Would love to get your thoughts on the vacancy of that role when you don't have it when you need it.
Yeah. It's interesting. At one point in my career, I was running a marketing department, and then someone said, hey, Jeff, we're going to give you a sales team as well. And so I had marketing and sales, and I quickly learned, when you're in sales, you get a quota, which really sucks. But it was an important thing for me to be accountable to the revenue number. But what I found when I was over marketing and sales, I realized I was kind of serving that RevOps role. And what we were able to do was that, I was no longer precious about, the marketing team did this and the sales team's doing this. It was all about, all right, how do we get better? And how do we drive more opportunities, more revenue for the business? And what a lot of companies do is they wait too long to make change when something's not working. And sometimes, like, it's at the QBR, they realize it. So a whole quarter's gone by. Sometimes it's like at the end of your planning session when, like, you've missed like the whole year. And if you're in the best case, a RevOps function enables real-time optimization of your program, right?
Yes.
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah, live time. Yeah, there's no retroing of it. It's you get to see it in action. You're right.
Yeah. So, and the example I always said, I had my marketing director and my sales director talking every day. Like, how did the leads look today? Like, hey, we got a lot of terrible leads. What did you do? Oh, we turned on this new campaign. Let us turn it off, reallocate those funds and do a different campaign. And when you're optimizing in real time, you're getting super efficient with your company's resources and the spend that you're putting into the market. And so rather than just blowing through your budget and having nothing to show for it, hopefully at the end of the quarter, you're like, well, we started off slow and then we made these changes based on sales input and what we're seeing. And then by the end of the quarter, we were rocking. And then when you get to the next quarter, you're like, all right, now we're optimized and now we're layering. Now what's the next thing we're going to try?
Yep.
And that's really when you get into like a real growth flywheel, is when you're optimizing and then you're trying new things and then those are working. That's how you get to high performance.
Totally. I mean, it's a force multiplier. I mean, like full stop. And again, I reflect on this a lot. Like, where would we be as a business, even in my previous roles of doing operations? You feel the quick changes and pivots that you can make within a quarter, and you feel the impact of that sometimes in that same quarter, instead of the 90-day retro where we have to zoom out and grab all the data and try to make sense of it. And sometimes pie charts the only thing we can come up with, but that's one of those things that like you have to be able to be in live time.
Yeah. Or sometimes, Brad, in the same week, ideally.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I mean, we're in SaaS. Like, if leads are down in a week, you don't want the whole quarter to kind of figure out what happened. You want to like, hopefully like, all right, turn that off, turn that on, try this, try that. Yep. And you got to have that real-time feedback. And that's a real value of a RevOps org, is like, hey, this isn't working, guys. How do we get it to work?
Totally. Absolutely. The time is money. And the last thing you want to do is waste any of that and wait until 2 or 3 months. 90 days is a long time in our world. And you have to be able to make adjustments quick. Chris, thinking the same thing for you with Sendoso.
Yeah, I'll take this in a kind of a slightly different angle based on what you actually just recently said in terms of the RevOps org. And so as I look at this, when we first got started, it was very small. We actually started with marketing ops, then we hired sales ops, then we brought on CX ops. But what we really, they were very siloed, lived in their different departments. And I think it took us too long to figure out, well, actually, we need to centralize this function and have it have a more RevOps type of leader that looks after it all. So that we are not doing something on sales that breaks something for customers, and vice versa. Is that we were actually experiencing that quite a bit, where marketing ops would break something that then would have some downstream effects. So, I think the overarching strategy is maybe thinking through like, when is the right time to have like a very centralized RevOps org. One takeaway for me in terms of orders operations is, I think like customer success operations tends to feel like it's the last one in. You tend to think of sales ops. You need it to run sales. When you get started, you need sales. And then marketing ops is really critical to these campaigns. And then customer ops just sometimes comes in later. Doing it again, if I were to start over, I'd say the importance of CX ops very early on is critical. And I think especially in businesses that have a longer like tech touch or scaled CS model too, like the criticality of having like a really strong data automation and data infrastructure on the customer side could make it that much better, because you put all this work up front when you're going after these customers and building pipeline. If it dies after coming into the customer org because you just have a mess of data and a mess of processes and a mess of systems, it's going to be harder on the long run. So that's kind of my spin on it.
Yeah. Well, I think if anything, again, we'll go back to that removing of bias, but it also helps you understand where things might be slipping through the cracks. I mean, look, we can all build the best relationships cross-departmentally, but there's a data flow behind that and a process behind that too that has to be supported. I think that is very much what I think you're saying in that thought of it. I love it. All right. Here's where it gets meaty, and here's where I'd say, as executives, you all know, and you've done this so many times, how to go ask for budget, how to go and justify hiring of this new resource, bringing on this new piece of technology. I would imagine that everybody that's in here listening, like, all right, where's the secret sauce that I can now go and take to my executive team and say, here's how we need to create this ROI. It's going to be like, there's no silver bullet to it. We all know that. Jeff, I'm going to let you start on the hardest question and start there, and then we'll go Chris and Dave.
It's probably not as hard as I think you're maybe presenting it to be, and it probably depends on the size of the company and the stage of the company. At a very small company, you probably need someone to maybe wear a RevOps hat who wears another hat as well. But as you grow and as you scale, the efficiency of your marketing and sales engine is just critical to your ability to grow, to the, hit your quarter, hit your year. And if you don't have a good RevOps function in place, it's going to be very, very hard for most companies to do that today. And so, it's of course you can make a rational ROI. Hey, we could optimize things, and we could reduce costs here, and we could grow faster, and we can get more productivity out of each sales rep. We can get more juice out of all of our marketing spend. I mean, those are all kind of almost obvious things for companies, but the reality is, as you get past a certain point, as you kind of probably get past about 10 million ARR, it's almost non-negotiable to, like any investor is going to want to understand, do you have a RevOps function? Because, private equity venture capital investors, they know, it's their money, right? So they're pouring in, and they know if you don't have those functions, you're probably not going to be operating as efficiently and putting those dollars to as good a use. So I see it as almost, it's almost become non-negotiable, and you kind of it's like a foundation. It's like, you got to have a finance department, you got to have a customer success department, even though sometimes it's hard to measure ROI on some of these departments, it's foundational in many ways to the success of the success and growth opportunity for an organization.
Totally. Exactly what we just talked about in the previous question, right? We have felt the pain of the void there. And so again, it's now becoming standardized, which I absolutely love. So, of course, I was doing this for a decade before starting Sonar. Like, nothing makes me happier than watching this adoption. Chris, excited to think about you in the same way in the ROI part.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot was said there that I would probably say. I think the things that maybe weren't mentioned that I could showcase on additional ROI of the function might be more tactical, like things like project completion, things that we need to do and that are done. So that's very black and white. I think we are increasingly giving RevOps the ownership, and this was recent, of all of our GTM tools and our tech stack too. And so part of ROI is really the adoption and usage of those tools. And it gives them more ownership on which one should we have, which one shouldn't we have, and centralizes not only the data that those tools need to work for the most part, but then the reps that need them, and then obviously the usage thereafter. So I think there's somewhat success measurements of kind of our tech stack. And then I think the other one's like how do you optimize for conversion, or how to have forecasting accuracy. Those things can definitely showcase an ROI on the function.
Totally. I will say, I think one of the cool and probably unique commonalities that Chris and I both have, talking about going to talk to investors and board members about the emphasis of this role, we share a board member. And even more serendipitous than that, Brian from Craft worked in operations. He used to do Salesforce consulting and worked internally for David and other folks doing this exact thing. So we've never really had a hard time challenging our board, like, hey, look, this is the path forward, so what we're going to do. They've actually brought it to us and said the same stuff. Dave, bring us home. Curious how you think about measuring the ROI of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that, with kind of what was already said, that, at this point, at this stage, once you hit a certain, size, that it's everyone's going to expect that you have a RevOps individual, or at least a team in place. But, one of the things is, every RevOps leader wants to grow their team as fast as possible, right? So how do you sell having that CS lead in there, or having the marketing, growing your team? And that's where it kind of go back to, the answer from my previous question about what happens when RevOps doesn't exist in your organization. You're not hitting those marks as it relates to conversion rates, win rates, ACV. And so what I always try to do and try to work with, RevOps to do as ask for another hire, or frankly, when I was bringing RevOps to a sub $10 million company in, was to, forecast and give some best guesses of how RevOps, what are they going to do and how are they going to improve each of those measures. So if we can go in and we can get better with our, ICP and segmentation, and we think that's going to help increase win rates by 2%, what does that look like from an ARR standpoint? And if you go line by line, you do that from conversion to employee attrition to all of that, like the numbers are big, right? And it starts to make a lot of sense. Now, you're relatively accountable for hitting those metrics now, but that's part of the deal. And I think that's a really good way of looking at it holistically as you think about welcoming RevOps and growing RevOps within your organization, is looking at it in that sense and tethering it to ROI. Because at the end of the day, there's still some CFOs and some VC boards out there that it's a lot easier for them to look at a line item and say, okay, we have 5 reps and they're bringing in $1 million and, they cost $220,000 loaded. And, that's quick math right there. But bringing in a RevOps and then having 3 people underneath a RevOps, like, I can't do that same easy math with these individuals coming in. So they need a little bit of extra coaching and help to get there from a number standpoint.
Absolutely. I'm going to share this, and hopefully we can see this as I'm pulling my screen up to share. We've had this conversation. I've had this conversation many a times with many people. It might be hard to see. I know there's probably a lot of squinting in. I'll share this PDF out, but over time, when we've had these conversations with folks, it's tough. It is a tough measurable. Look, we'll call the elephant out in the room. I don't carry a quota from a RevOps perspective. I never have in my whole career of doing it. And so it's easier when you're like, oh yeah, well, this amount of dollars in, this amount of dollars out. But it can be tough to not have that direct correlation if you're not an exact revenue generator. But there are still ways you can articulate to your C-suite of the impact this role can have. And it could also be on the software side. You can see this, again, this cheat sheet. I've used this so many times in presentations at different conferences and events, but it might not be perfect, but man, does it get you a little bit further down the road to objectively go put something in front of a CFO, a CEO, a CRO, a CMO and say, hey, even if this is directionally right, this makes sense for the investment for us. And so, as you can imagine, like I said, I've been selling to RevOps for a while. We also, I've done that, walked that mile. It's tough, but we do our best to make sure that we can quantify it. And if there's anything that we do, I love doing it with our customers, hold us accountable to it. Like, let's look back at this. If we're going to help you build this ROI statement, man, I hope 365 days from now, our conversation's a little bit easier because we've delivered what we said we can. And whether that be on a software side or a services side or anything in between. So, man, we're right on time. It's a little after 3:30 here on the East Coast. At least Chris is like, man, I'm ready to go eat some lunch out in the Bay Area. But we do have a couple questions. We'll cruise through these. If you have any more, we're going to get to many of them as we can over the next 5 or 10 minutes. I am going to give the mic over one more time for some final thoughts from everybody. But while we're getting into it, let's see. Ooh, Darren, this is a good one. Chris, you might have some insight on this, a little bit from a manufacturing, doing physical goods, I would say. But based on your experience, does the path of pitching RevOps differ in a manufacturing type sense versus SaaS sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, whether you're a manufacturing company or a SaaS company, data is going to be critical. You maybe tech stack systems might be similar in some cases. That's going to be critical. And driving sales, keeping customers happy is critical. So I think maybe the terminology for RevOps has been more familiarized with SaaS companies, but I think in general the outcomes that business leaders are desiring is applicable to all industries.
I would agree. I would say not to be overly coy and say industry agnostic, but ROI centric being what it is, the function itself is like I said, kind of a force multiplier. Staying in tune with that, but just a little bit of a switch. It does change industry by industry and segment by segment of how this gets titled. I'm actually going to add Mike's question on the screen so we can all see it. Generally speaking, what are the different titles that you're seeing? I love this question because it is a massive evolution that we're all feeling right now. But I've seen systems, data, forecasting, analysts. I'll add to that BizOps. You've got data, like we're now talking with more like data science teams and BI teams of how we think about this. But yeah, curious to get all of y'all's thoughts as you've seen it in your current companies and previous ones. What might be driving the way that we articulate the title of these roles? Dave, I'm going to pick on you first and give
Yeah,
you a little bit of time to think about it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I might not have a great answer because it seems like a lot of these, more nuanced titles for RevOps are probably going to be at the larger corporations that, I might not have tons of experience in. But, what I see a lot of the more specific titles to where they sit from a department standpoint. So obviously, you got your head of RevOps, and then you got marketing ops and sales ops and CS ops and things like that. I haven't run into again under kind of 50 million a lot of the forecasting ops or data ops or things like that. But
Totally. Jeff, any thoughts title wise? How you see it?
Yeah, I think there's no conventional wisdom right now. So I think the way I would probably look at it is like, what's going to work best for your organization? Where do you have the greatest need for operational efficiency and these kind of roles? And then start to build it. So, for example, in our org right now, it's really it comprises really sales ops and marketing ops, or really what comprises the RevOps organization. But in other organizations, I know CX folds in. Sometimes the one role I have not seen fold in that I think you talked about was the data science. A lot of times that's in a different kind of role because it's supporting the enterprise with all kinds of analytics, but it's kind of, it's critical to RevOps to have that. But yeah, I don't know that there's a good kind of conventional org structure on it. Just like there's probably, like in the marketing world, there's not a really conventional marketing org. There's not a conventional sales org anymore. I think organizations just have to figure out what's going to work best for them. But as long as the thinking behind RevOps is, hey, we have a function here that's really focused on, really optimizing our marketing, our sales, our CX approach through a data-driven methodology. That's where it belongs. It belongs in that RevOps function.
I agree. Chris, I know you've seen this at Sendoso in a couple different titles and flavors. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, all those things. I mean, we have business systems data, and then the other like sales ops, marketing ops. The one unique thing to us that we have that's not listed here is we actually have our revenue enablement roll up into our VP of revenue and customer operations. And so the goal there was that we wanted the team, the business leader who was looking at the conversion data, analyzing forecasting, looking at business systems, owning all of our GTM stack, to have the ability to work extremely closely, aka have them report into the revenue enablement function, so that they can make sure that if we're investing in systems, the team actually knows how to use them and is enabled to use them. And so I think that's the only different call out that we've done that we're finding success in.
I love that. I tell people this all the time, and I hate giving cliche answers or very high level answers. It depends. And I think this answers a lot for both the title and specifically where it reports into. Michael Ordup asked the question, which again, good seeing you last week too, Michael. It's been fun. Like it goes into the responsibility side, but also goes into where does it roll into a specific department? It absolutely depends. And a couple of rationales behind that. Let's say that you're a very fast sales cycle. We'll pick on our friends over at Calendly. Calendly has such a fast sales cycle, right? It's all PLG motion. Now, there's some operational mechanisms there that help, but their biggest focus, again, they're a customer of ours too. We've known them forever. They're so focused on how do I make sure I keep this customer and expand them. So their focus on the ops side is very centric to the success world, way different than the top of funnel, like either marketing or sales side of things. Inverse of that, Chris, you and I met when I was way back at Terminus, longer sales cycles, like closer to 90 plus days. And at that point, when you have a very isolated and very like focused TAM and you take an ABM approach, you have to be really spot on with how you operationalize behind that. So when I say it depends, it's not necessarily a cop out. It's more of like it truly does depend on how your business runs, what industry you're in, and how you go and service your customers. So we've got about 5 minutes left, probably a little bit less than that because we'll let everybody get back to their day. I know it's a busy day, especially for you guys running businesses. But I always like to ask as we part, we have a lot of folks from our community in here that are new in their operations journey. So I always like to ask, what advice would you have? Y'all have all felt and seen and been around the impact of ops, but if they're early in their journey, what advice do you have for them to excel and grow and really hit that next level in their career? Dealer's choice. I'll let you guys pick to see who goes first.
I'll take it from, I think that with so many great communities popping up, Wizard of Ops, for example, joining a community and really finding a mentor is something that I would do, post haste as a young RevOps person to really understand the ropes and learn a lot about what you're trying to become. I think that's critically important.
I couldn't agree more. Chris?
I would say going after and getting admin certifications for a lot of the different tools is critical. I think that's an interesting way to make yourself that much more of an expert. And then I think getting a little bit outside of your comfort zone. I think for some folks that might start in marketing ops and dream of being RevOps will maybe learn some of the customer systems or the sales systems. And so I think being well-rounded in that regard will lead you to a successful path to a VP or C-suite.
I love it. I love it. Everybody wants to be around the same table that we all get to hang out on. So, Jeff, bring us home.
Yeah,
Any advice?
I mean, I kind of feel like the best thing for someone in RevOps is to have either worked in sales or marketing before they go into RevOps, and that's usually what you see right now because it's a relatively new function. But spend some time working in a marketing team, working in the sales team. Really understand how those teams operate, and then at some point you could pivot into a RevOps role, and you'll be very glad that you had that experience, so you kind of see what the challenges of marketing and sales are firsthand, as opposed to just looking at everything through a spreadsheet view, which you often do in RevOps. So getting that real kind of departmental experience, I think, is critical for people that are coming up in their career who want to eventually move into RevOps.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. And I will piggyback off that and say there's no better way to have a better and higher level of empathy than walking a mile somebody else did. And so if you're in operations and you're supporting go-to-market teams, whether it's sales, marketing, success, especially sales is tough. We all know it. We've all been through it. We do it on a daily basis. But it's tough. But it creates such a high level of empathy for your audience and for the people you work with. Guys, I can't thank you all enough. I say this all the time. I look at you all as mentors and leaders to me. Appreciate everything you've done to help me in my career and help us with everything Sonar and WizOps. And if you're not in WizOps yet, please jump in. I just dropped the link in there. Click right there in the middle of the screen. But more importantly, we've got more fun stuff coming up. We've got another webinar next week. Very polarizing, I would say. Salesforce versus HubSpot. I feel like there's going to be some boxing gloves that may or may not be put on or come off when that event happens. But would love to have everybody there. But most importantly, guys, can't thank y'all enough. I always am smarter after spending time with y'all, and I hope everybody in our community is. Jeff, Dave, Chris, thank y'all so much. We'll see you guys on the other side. Have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thanks, Brad.
Yep.
See you, man.
Yeah. Bye-bye.